This webinar is being recorded.
Good morning, bonjour.
Good morning, everybody.
Hola, we've got people joining.
Bonjour, bonjour. Good morning, everybody. Can you hear us? Can you go raise your hand? Or yes, you can. Thank you, Andrea. Could you write just on a sort of purely management point of view, could you make sure that if you have questions for us, there are in the Q&A as opposed to the chat, so that it's easier to locate? And also, if you want to tell us where you're from, that would be great. And the levels that you teach, because we'll be talking at presented sources that are aimed at different levels. And we hopefully we'll have a little bit of time maybe for you to tell us your feelings about the importance of cultural input in the language classroom. But because we've got lots to present, I'm going to make a start and I'm going to share my screen. So please let me know if you're going to see this. I'm going to share my sound as well. Can you all see this? Yeah.
That's perfect, Annie.
Okay, so I'm not going to make it. Oh, is that okay for everybody? Just going to hide this. Okay, so welcome everybody. And welcome the Language Show for hosting this conference today on a Sunday morning. Thank you to Susie Buell from Polyglot Languages. I'm going to share this talk with her. I'm Danielle Bourdet, and we're both working on something that is going to be coming at some stage when our lives allow us to do that, called Francophonie, and Susie will have a word about that later on. So as I said, we've got a lot of sources to mention in an attempt to motivate language learning through offering a cultural experience. Bringing to the classroom the culture of the country whose language you're studying is something we both feel very passionate about, and we've been passionate about that for a very long time now. And we'd like to share possible sources and resources to infuse your lessons with culture without necessarily making a huge amount of work for yourself. I'll start with possible sources of materials for French, as that's my specialty, and also at the intermediate upwards, intermediate and advanced level. And Susie will then have a look at other languages and also at, sorry, I'm just making my, starting my timer. I want to be, I don't want to take on Susie's time, at the lower end of Key Stage 2 and early Key Stage 3. So we're sharing the talk that way. So what do we want these cultural resources to achieve? Well, we want them to make learners aware that their reality is not the only reality, obviously, to awaken their curiosity in those cultures outside their own. We want to generate discussions and discuss things like cliches and stereotypes. And basically, we want to motivate learning by making the foreign, which could be negative, into something very positive and yummy. That doesn't need to be in a major, big, time-consuming way. You could simply think of tweaking the images that you present. So if you're talking about, for instance, traditions and special events like a wedding, why don't you look at African wedding cakes? They're quite glorious here. Or if you're talking about biscuits, why not mention these little Togolese biscuits from Togo, which are made with coconut, and jam. It doesn't need to be strawberry jams, it can be baobab jam, or a cake made of haricot. I'm sure that would generate beans, that is, that would generate some discussions. What must these resources do? It seems to be stating the obvious, but it needs to open minds and hearts to a global word. It's easy to say diversity is all around us. That's not the problem, but the inclusion we need to work at. We need to include this diversity. What we must also do is fight against cliches and prejudices and be careful not to reinforce them. Many times when these slides, by the way, one is about what is Africa. This first slide was what the first words that came to people's mind when they were asked about what Africa was: suffering, famine, hunger, drought, poverty, corruptions, and so on. Not these beautiful things of beauty, love, and so on, family, potential, happiness. So there is a negativity that we need to fight against, and we also need to present the world outside the Eurocentric optics. What must these resources do too is actually not shy away from hard realities of history. We have tended to do that, and myself as a course book writer have not really done that thoroughly over the past few years. But we can't ignore why French-speaking countries speak French. We can't ignore that it's not necessarily a good thing for local people. So we need to include, especially at the higher level, material that would have some unsavory history, and fight again the narrative that has been put in place by colonizing countries like France, Britain, and others, and show what it has meant for local people and the local cultures that have been destroyed in some cases by the colonialism, by this glottophagie, as this article is mentioning, about this cannibalism by the French language. And again, it's worth discussing that the French-speaking countries are not actually French-speaking. This philosopher who is from Burkina Faso, Joseph Kizerbo, mentioned the fact that 80% of the population of Senegal speaks Wolof, not French. Only less than 5% speak French. So he's talking here about the fact that Senegal is Wolophone, not Francophone, and that it's an abuse of language. It's a misnomer. So we, Susie and myself, have been very careful in our choice of name for the project we're both working on, of calling it Francosphère, because we want to fight against that spirit of colonialism. How do you find relevant resources easily? One easy way is to have published materials. So main courses might have interesting resources or supplementary materials. If they don't, and they should, but if they don't, you would be able to find resources online. It's just time consuming. So we're going to show you places where you can access them quite easily. So renewable resources that keep on giving. Social networks, can't get away from them, some websites. And if I have the time, I'll show you some of the things that I've found recently, which I thought were really, really good for French. Published resources. Well, being a course book writer myself, I've worked, it's been a priority, well, one of the priorities of mine to offer the users of my materials something that is going to take them on a journey of discovery, not just of the language, but of the culture associated with the language. And I've always wanted to make that that experience, that journey of discovery, as rich as possible. Especially when you publish for international markets, like this IGCSE book, you have to. You can't be Franco-French about it. I want to show the differences, but I also want to show the similarity of experience between a typical day in a French school or in a school in New Caledonia. Now, the similarities are enough for us to be able to use high frequency language, which I put in inverted commas, quoting, but obviously it needs to be tweaked a little bit to allow for the differences. For instance, in New Caledonia, this young girl, her typical school day involves helping grandma grow and sell igname. So that's the word for yam. Okay, that's not going to be very high frequency in France, but it is in New Caledonia. It has to be acknowledged. In this spread about places in the town, in Burkina Faso, in the town of Bobo-Dioulasso, you will have high frequency language like a boulangerie and croissant. It's just in a different context. They do make croissant in a boulangerie called La Bonne Miche in Bobo-Dioulasso. So, but restaurants are not going to be called restaurant. They will be called maquis. So again, a little difference, but nothing that is going to be hugely demanding cognitively on your students. May I mention that the CUP, should you be interested, are offering a 20% discount. So as this slide is going to be made available, and Susie will have a word about where and how after, please, if you are interested, make a note of that. Similarly, at a higher level, environment is very high up on the list of discussions, obviously, at A level and IB. Let's look at what it means for other countries than ours. Or the issues, teenage issues, are they the same in the Antilles-Guyane as they are for us here in Europe? Supplement, and oh yes, and if your resources that you buy don't do that, if this is something that you value, be demanding. Go to your publisher, ask for that to happen. If they are not aware that that's important for you, they will not have this, because for the writer, this is much harder to do than something which is cultureless. If you want to supplement your resources by something that you might be already aware of, the Mary Glasgow magazines, they go out of their way to offer a vision of what life is outside France in the Francosphere, in the French-speaking world. Here, for instance, one issue is about Tunisia. Here it's about Benin in Africa, Switzerland, Madagascar, Bamako in Mali. So you will always come across something that will allow you to include other countries. Being in charge of the teacher's notes for one of the magazines, this I include a lot of information about why French is spoken. in those countries through articles. By the way, again, Mayor Glasgow is offering a 15% discount off print, should you be interested. I've got to hurry up a little bit. Some of my go-to places to get this sort of information easily: newsletters, but you get by email, so that you get reminded all the time of where these resources are. Social networks and websites. Okay, newsletters, a huge place for me because it's full of very interesting things, is Le Portail des Outre-mer. Okay, where you get all sorts of interesting articles about daily life, like going back to school in Saint-Pierre-et-Miquelon, immigration scenes through the Guyanais eyes, and maybe some territoires that are not so well known, like Les Terres Australes. You've got various themes, okay, sports, society, and all of the French overseas territories. Again, you can discuss why France should be there, but that's another issue. You get in-depth dossier with celebrations, patrimoine, heritage, useful for A-level, and things like esclavage, the slavery issue. Another newsletter about Africa through Bezos and Afro Gadget would have cultural information about festivals, history, and more contemporary artists. Lifestyle, again, useful to find photos that would be relevant to everybody in your classrooms, and not just people that don't look like this. Interesting hairstyles, interesting dishes, ingredients that might not be so habitual for your learners. And something last but not least, models, positive models. So we have this article about an astronomer called Maham Kere, who has an asteroid named after him, about his historical people that have been very important in the Black history, if you want to call it like that, and various initiatives that are actually by Africans for Africans. About the French-speaking countries, the Francosphere, Francophonie as a whole, Agora Francophone is very useful because it's like a shop window. So you are shown little articles about various issues, homosexuality, mariage pour tous, where the Swiss emigrates and so on, why they destroyed Asterix and Obelix in Canada by burning the books, and how innovative Africa is. So that's the sort of thing. You click on a link, it takes you to the article from that country, in a newspaper from that country. So, and then you get lost because it's full of interesting stuff. Social network, Facebook. I subscribe to various places. Temple Éducatif can be a bit flippant and silly, but it's quite nice because they have nice photos, like l'Afrique as it is, l'Afrique as you see it in films. So again, creating discussions, you know, funny things about life in lockdown, jokes, and then meeting people that you might not come across regularly, like this very, very famous TikToker, Kabilam, who is Senegalese, and he does silent things, which you can then ask your students to put words with, which is great. Another one, which is more highbrow culture, Afro Optimist, has fascinating things about the importance of language, how French took over, how Africans Africanize French, and maybe for the more advanced. Fatou Diom is very present there. She's a Franco-Senegalese writer, and she is absolutely wonderful in discussing all sorts of issues. Another one is the Deutsche Welle Afrique. It's a German media platform. It has lots of things in French about Africa, the place of women in the République démocratique du Congo, for instance, lots about African history, about discovering towns. It's very, very interesting. If you want to go to the West Indies, Spanish or French speaking, there is a new TV channel called Kaleidoscope TV. You need to pay if you want the actual TV channels, but if you just want the snippets, it's free on Facebook, and they also have a website. It really is interesting because it's offering visions of things that are quite alien to us here in the UK, I mean. If you want to have a little bit of Canada in your classroom, Le Téléjournal de 18h is quite a good source. Okay, it's got this chap has a very clear diction with a strong Canadian accent. You can discover so news items from Quebec. For instance, here it's about the réconciliation with the indigenous Indians. Cyberdépendance, so things that you would discuss anyway, James Bond films, but with a Canadian accent. Websites, Africa. If you want materials about Africa, La Boutique Africa Vivre is a great place. It has all of these themes: fashion, beauty, food, books, films, music, games, and so on. For books, for instance, you can discover BD, comics, or for younger learners, picture books. For A-level and IB, where you have to write a book review, you can come across some here. And anything that the book would have, like a film or critical reviews of the book, would be there as well. It's really a treasure trove of things. Same for music. You can discover music yourself, or you can have at all levels. You can come across famous people like Amadou and Mariam from Mali, or discover new ones. Or even if it is just to have a CD of music in the background when your kids come, you can find music from all over these places here: Guadeloupe, Guyane, Haiti, Martinique, and so on. You can also find games about Black history. There's a card game about Black history in French, obviously, about the Sept Familles de la Côte d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, so happy families. And this is a game for expressions from the French-speaking world. Another website is Caribe Info, about West Indies, again with everyday life articles, okay, and some discussions about language. As I said, the place of French needs to be discussed in various French-speaking countries. America, lots of interesting resources in l'Amérique. So it's called Francophonie des Amériques. It has interesting things on North America, Central America, West Indies, South America, and especially the history of Quebec. And this is the Toussaint Louverture, which is the French speaking country of Haiti. With the historical character Toussaint Louverture, who is huge, and I'll be writing about him. This is my cue. Sorry, I'll stop it. My coup de cœur, I'll do that very quickly. TV5, most people would be familiar with. TV5 Plus offer you the opportunity to have films, series, and a great little series about a dad who's discussing life with his children, how to help your children do homework, and how to get, about pocket money. So things that, GCSE Key Stage 4 kids would discuss. Musique de la Francophonie is another really interesting website. It has all these themes: family, identity, celebration, sports, and on, and then songs attached to each of those films, of those themes. Sorry. Google Patrimoine. Patrimoine is A-level, IB. You'll recognize that. That's heritage. All places in French, in the Francosphere. Okay, and then you click, and it opens up links that you can investigate. So this one is also my coup de cœur, one of my top. It's about immigration. It's about sharing the sharing of the planet. If you do IB, it's the experience of second-generation immigrants in conversation with their parents. It's really fascinating. If you have the chance to go for virtual trips to French-speaking countries, we've established links with a Senegalese chap who's called Alioune, who could actually maybe take your class to visit like a school, like he's done in the past. Obviously, it doesn't come for free, but it's fairly reasonable. Similar with Sam from Quebec, who is going to start French tours in French of his city, Quebec City. This website lists all sorts of things from all over the world, including newspapers, magazines. It's got the website, the web address for all of that through Africa, America, Europe, and Oceania. So it's a treasure trove again. If you haven't, if you're not aware, or if you haven't joined, please join the Decolonizing MFL Facebook groups. Susie and myself tend to post a lot on that. As I said, diversity exists, inclusion must happen. And do I have the time, Susie, to play this little bit? Yeah, this is something that I wanted to do, a transition between my bit and Susie, who's going to look at the younger age learners. But there are things that you can find that are actually working for both, because the language is just high frequency, and the themes are simple. The language is simple enough. The themes can be explored by higher students. Now, when you have something like this written, a poem written by René Filombe from Cameroon, you would like to hear it said with a voice from Cameroon. And I thought this was wonderful. So it's a minute. I'm just going to play it for you. I've put the translation on the side for if you are not French speakers.
L'homme qui te ressemble, j'ai frappé à ta porte, j'ai frappé à ton cœur. Pour avoir bon lit, pour avoir bon feu, pourquoi me repousser? Ouvre-moi, mon frère. Pourquoi me demander si je suis d'Afrique, si je suis d'Amérique, si je suis d'Europe? Ouvre-moi, mon frère. Pourquoi me demander la longueur de mon nez, l'épaisseur de ma bouche, la couleur de ma peau et le nom de mes dieux? Ouvre-moi, mon frère. Je ne suis pas un noir, je ne suis pas un rouge, je ne suis pas un jaune. Je ne suis pas un blanc, mais je ne suis qu'un homme. Ouvre-moi, mon frère, ouvre-moi ta porte, ouvre-moi ton cœur, car je suis un homme, l'homme de tous les temps, l'homme de tous les cieux, l'homme qui te ressemble. René Filombe.
I'll stop sharing, and I will leave Susie to take over. So as you could see, it was something that could be exploited at all levels, that it has a very strong message, and that's the sort of message that we would like to carry across in our material. Susie, over to you.
Thank you very much, Jenny. So I'm going to focus more on the lower levels. So predominantly I teach now in secondary, but I have got quite a number of years of experience of working in the primary school. And my resources will focus on French, German and Spanish, so a little bit more variety in terms of the languages. So the first thing I wanted to show you was a Monopoly game, which was created by a colleague on Twitter in the first lockdown. And this is, there's a link at the bottom, which you'll get access to if you email us for the slides. And that is on my blog, polyglotlanguages.co.uk. It's available in Spanish, French, and in German. And essentially, it looks like this. So around the outside of the game, you, as you would expect with a regular Monopoly game, you have got some key questions to try and get the students to perhaps engage away from their screens, or maybe use their screens to find out some of the information, but really just to try and encourage them to find out a little bit more about a Francophone or Spanish speaking or German speaking country of their choice. And I can say personally from my own learners, that was really, really popular, and also helped to engage parents in the language learning process too. Again, in the first lockdown, I set up through my languages company, Polyglot Languages, a poetry competition. I decided that I would try and make it accessible to all learners, including primary, by asking students to submit a haiku. So if you don't know, haiku is a poem that it consists of 5 syllables and 7 syllables and 5. So essentially, if you count on your fingers, you've got "Au Madagascar," 5 syllables, "Dans l'océan Indien," 7 syllables, "Vanille et les murs," 5 syllables. And what the students did, and this was in their hundreds, was to send me their haikus, and we made a competition out of that, just again to encourage them to do something creative in lockdown, but also use language in a very simple way without necessarily having to focus too much on their accuracy or on creating sentences that were necessarily grammatically complex. For those of you who teach German and Spanish, you can see there, oh, sorry, I went forward too quickly. You can see there some of the other countries that some of the students focused on in the wider Spanish and German speaking world. Also in lockdown, a number of colleagues alerted me to the fact that they were setting up what they call virtual tours. And these can be created really simply in a Word or a PowerPoint document. And there's a link there at the top to one from a very generous colleague who has created one about Morocco. And on this next slide, you can see an example of one of the slides where if you click on the icons, it will take you via a hyperlink to some of those places on the map of Morocco. And throughout the presentation, you can find out about the foods and about the culture and the festivals and so on, which I think the children have found really, really interesting. I'm also a really big advocate of using songs in foreign language learning. And again, for those of you who teach Spanish and German, a couple of links there, which I'm not going to have time to click on, but where you can focus your students' attention on where French and Spanish is spoken outside of mainland France and Spain. And again, within the presentation, there is a video which I think doesn't want to play, but I think, again, we're a little bit pushed for time. Just going to move forward. For Spanish teachers, and again, this is available in German and in French and the Spanish, newsinslowspanish.com, newsinslowgerman.com, and newsinslowfrench.com. A really good way of your students accessing the news, but at a pace which is suitable to them. And again, sometimes there are articles on there that don't just focus on Spain, France, and Germany, but also the countries where the language is spoken. For the Spanish teachers amongst you, I would also recommend Telediaria en 4 Minutos and BBC Mundo. There's also a fantastic website called muyinteresante.com and Periódico El Gancho, and you can see there a couple of screenshots of some of the articles that you might come across. In French and Spanish, and also there is a Mexican version of the website, you have got Brut. Brut, if you are on social media, is also available on Instagram and Facebook. But if you click on the links there, brut.media and then /FRES or MX, that will take you to the Brut website. And again, you can see from the screenshots, it focuses on places like La Guyane Française, and then also places outside of mainland Spain. Again, in the last lockdown, myself and some other languages teachers got together, put our heads together and started to create these cultural calendars. And what we wanted to do was give teachers an opportunity to try and bring that wider French, German and Spanish speaking world into their lessons on a daily basis. You can access those calendars for free on polyglotlanguages.co.uk. There isn't currently access for the entire year, but that is something that I'm working on with the limited time that I currently have. You can see here an example in French of the calendar from June 2020, so I think it was the first one that I did, and all of the links in blue are hyperlinked to either videos or external websites and links, and there really is something there for everyone. Again, you can see from the screenshot here, I don't just focus on France, there are links to Guadeloupe, Polynésie Française, Belgique, and so on. I've also included a link to some proverbs that link to the different months of the year, and there are also links to the saints' days for each of the months too. Within my lessons, I always focus on La Semaine de la Francophonie. I'm sure you are aware, if you're a French teacher, that the month of March is really, really important for those of us who teach French. And again, you can see on the right an article taken from the Mary Glasgow Allons-y magazine, which Danielle alluded to earlier. And it's also important to say that if you are on Twitter, if you link in with IFRU London, which is the Institut Français du Royaume-Uni, they often have lots of competitions and exciting things going on, which you can engage with your learners, whether they be primary age, secondary, or perhaps even adult learners. For the German speaking teachers amongst you, Saturday, the 10th of September is German Language Day. So again, that could be something that you put in your school calendar and make a really big thing about where German is spoken within the world outside of Germany. For the Spanish teachers amongst you, Dia de la Lengua Española is the 23rd of April. And again, if you are on social media, you will find that around about the start of April, teachers start to post quite prolifically different resources and materials that they are thinking of using in their language lessons. I also wanted to allude to these 23 lessons on the Sustainable Development Goals. I was actually the author for the French lessons, and you can see from the ticks on the screen the Sustainable Development Goals, which I focused on, which I felt linked to the kinds of work that we already do as language teachers from primary all the way through to secondary. I should say they're aimed at Key Stage 3 and above, but some of the links within the lessons are definitely suitable for younger learners. And you can see there a screenshot of the website. So if you follow the link within the presentation, there are resources in French, German and Spanish. They all come with fully explained lesson plans, and there are links to videos, and obviously I've tried my hardest there to make sure that there are links to the wider French, Spanish and German speaking world. Mary Glasgow magazines, I won't dwell on because Danielle has already alluded to this, but in Spanish you have got a number of magazines, and again the content within those you could find potentially online, but I think what's great about these magazines, and this is something that we've drawn on for our Francosphère project, is that they are comprehensible. I think one of the difficult things about finding authentic material online is that often it isn't quite at the right level, and there are perhaps too many words that the students haven't encountered and wouldn't necessarily know. So here's an example from the Quetzal magazine from a little while ago, and here you can see it focuses on different festivals around the Spanish-speaking world, so Navidad, Dia de los Muertos, and El Carnaval. And for your higher level, perhaps you've got some resources here which focus on Argentina, so La Pascua, and then also Sistema Educativa en Argentina. For the Germanists amongst you, there are still Mary Glasgow magazines in German, less unfortunately, but I think that's a reflection of how much German is sadly being taught these days. But again, the link is there, and please do benefit from the money off coupon that Danielle shared earlier. You can see here again from Das Rad from September 2012. I don't think that the content necessarily dates because it's cultural. You've got links here to students from Austria and Switzerland, and then a final one here about Christmas and how that might be spent in Austria. I use these really regularly. These are ELI magazines, an alternative to Mary Glasgow if you like, slightly more expensive, but again, some really nice content in there, which links to the wider French, Spanish, German, and also Italian speaking world, if we have any Italian speakers on the call. Seminal is another one for Spanish. So again, accessible online. So that is a subscription-based site, but again, something that you might find useful. And for German teachers, Meine Woche, which is a playback press publication. And again, just a couple of screenshots there. And you can see on the website, there are some short listening texts, again, which you might find useful in your lessons. This one I only came across a few months ago. I've been aware of Spiegel magazine for a number of years. I used to teach German back in my early career. But this one, Dein Spiegel, is aimed much more at younger German learners. And you can see from the visuals, it's really appealing to children. I wanted to include this, Santé en poésie et consigne tout autour du monde. I use this probably on a fortnightly, if not monthly basis in my lessons. Poetry, which links to lots and lots of countries around the world. The link there to where you can find that on Amazon very cheaply. And again, just a couple of quick screen grabs. So you've got a poem here, which I use with my year 9s who are currently, their country of focus is Morocco. And then for perhaps your younger learners, if you are learning the numbers, the very basic numbers, you could also do that in an interesting way by linking to the Fusée Ariane in Guyane. Our lovely colleague Claire Seckham from Lightbulb Languages has also just published some really basic poetry, I think in Spanish and French now, and they are available for just £6. So I would definitely recommend that you take a look at those. And the Linguiscope colleagues, so Stéphane Delron, Linguiscope obviously famous for their interactive website, but there is a shop within Linguiscope. And again, there are some fantastic resources, very inexpensive. A live stream video link to a DVD called Les Correspondants, which are pen pals from Ottawa and Paris who get together and compare their lives and traditions. And then you've also got this series about La Francophonie, Haiti, Maghreb, and so on. I'm sure some of you are already aware of the Global Centre Devon resources, so Hola Peru and Take Mali. Not cheap, I think they come in at around £50 plus postage, but again, it is a fully comprehensive scheme which you could use over a series of weeks and months. Myself, I've been creating over the last 4 or 5 years polyglot languages resources. So again, focused on helping younger learners to discover the French-speaking world. So currently those revolve around France, Belgium, Switzerland, Quebec, and Morocco. And I am currently in the process of writing the Guadeloupe book. They are available for just £5 each. And again, they are fully comprehensible and are available as ebooks. What I try to do to bring all of this together is give my students at the start of the school year a passport, and you can see a link at the top there to where you can download that for free. I include a couple of blank pages, and every time my students come across a different part of the Francophone world, they get a stamp in their passport and they write down the name of the country. And it's actually quite amazing by the end of the school year, just how many stamps and how many countries they have visited. Danielle earlier alluded to Francosphère, which is our new venture. We are in the process of trying to collate some of these amazing resources, which we've shared with you online, but making them, as Danielle said, comprehensible, so that we're using authentic resources as the basis for our materials, but we're taking away all of the hard work that you would have to do by making them accessible and giving you teacher-friendly resources, which are culturally rich and are also going to be available at different levels, including primary. Those of you who are primary French specialists, there is a link there to a free resource just so that you can get a little taste of what we are doing at the moment. I hope that has been interesting. I'm conscious that it was a bit of a whistle-stop tour, that I've left on there our details. Please do make contact. And those of you who would like a copy of today's presentation, I haven't quite had the time to upload that with a link to Google. Please do contact either myself or Danny on the email addresses shared, and we would be more than happy to send you a copy of that so that you've got the direct links and all of the materials that we've shared. I'm conscious I haven't been looking at the chat or the Q&A. Danny, do you want to hop on and tell me if there are any questions or anything that we can answer?
No, one question was about German resources, but that's been
I answered
yes.
that. Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully there was some there. Not as many.
Yeah, we've got 1 minute left. Could I ask you to show how important it is for you to have cultural rich resources in percentage, so that we have a quick feedback on that? How, you know, from 100% I need to be doing this in my class to 0% I would like to but can't, you know, the sort of spectrum. Could you do that quickly so that we get a feel for how you feel about it? You know, and it can take on board the fact that this is not easy to do. This is not something that is this is something that's time consuming. As a writer, I know I used to spend hours writing and researching and making sure that I got it right. I see a lot of 100%, so that's fantastic. Yes, it is vast.
Sheila, I think, has said that she's found it all very fascinating and would love the PowerPoint. Please do make a note of either my email address, susiebuell@gmail.com, or Danny's email address, frenchmatters@outlook.com.
So I've put that in the chat. Yes, I've put them in the chat. So there's no other questions. So I think we've gone 1 minute over. So we are going to need to go, because there's somebody else waiting for the room.
Well,
so.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I think there were, at the height of the presentation, 64 of you. So a great commitment on a Sunday morning, and enjoy the rest of your conference.
Yeah, and I see that there is somebody who was discouraged to add cultural elements, so Paolo. So I hope this is encouraging you to do that, and we will be helping, hopefully soon, helping you to do that. Merci beaucoup, au revoir, bon dimanche.
Thank you, goodbye.